Good morning, eighth grade. I would like to go over a couple of things that we have done in Unit 8. So the number one thing to remember about the Pythagorean theorem is that this is only something that we use for right triangles, okay? And so any other kind of triangle, this theorem does not apply to. And so the first thing you want to make sure is, am I working with a right triangle? If I am, then the Pythagorean theorem might be a great resource for me to use in answering questions. So here I have an example of a triangle, and then the outside squares, we've just taken each side of the triangle and drawn a square out from that side length. So if the first side is 4, then I need to go out 4 to create this nice 4x4 square. Okay, and so thinking about for the Pythagorean theorem, I have 2 legs and a hypotenuse. Okay, so that vocabulary is going to be very important. The hypotenuse is always directly across from my right angle, and then the other 2 pieces of the triangle are the legs. It doesn't matter which direction my triangle is facing, if I always know that the hypotenuse is directly across from that right angle. And I also can keep in mind it's the longest side. So either of those 2 pieces of information should help me determine the hypotenuse. It needs to be the long side, or it's just directly across from that right triangle. And I spell that hypotenuse. Okay, so for the Pythagorean theorem, the hypotenuse is our side C. And then our legs, we're going to label as sides A and B. Okay, so if you think about the Pythagorean theorem, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I'm talking about the leg squared plus the second leg squared should equal my hypotenuse squared. And so 3, if my side length is 3, then that 3x3 square has an area of 9. So if this were my side A, side B, and side C, I know that A squared equals 9, that 3x3. That means if I've labeled this leg as my B, then my B squared equals 16, because this area in here is 16. Then my last square, which is off of the hypotenuse, we could say it's adjacent, it's right next to, it's the square coming from the hypotenuse. This area is 25, or I could say C squared equals 25. And so in the Pythagorean theorem, by taking those side lengths and what we know about the areas of those squares, we would say that A squared, in this case 9, okay? So for this particular triangle, 9 plus my B squared, which is 16, should equal C squared, which is 25. As long as that works out, you have a right triangle, okay? If it doesn't work, then you don't have a right triangle. So in answering some of these questions, what are the lengths of the legs? Well, we have a 3 and a 4, those are my 2 legs. The length of the hypotenuse is 5, that's this side right here. What are the areas of the squares off of the legs? We just did that, 9 and 16. And then what is the sum of those 2 areas? 25. What is the area of the square off of the hypotenuse? 25. Okay, so that's why this Pythagorean theorem is great for us. If we are ever missing one of these pieces of information, this equation right here will help us find the missing piece.